Leaders may be the ones who point the way forward in our community, but it takes those who aren't afraid to get in the trenches and fight for what is right, who are the real legends. For one Savannaian, the fight for freedom abroad later became the fight for the right to protect and serve at home. One strove to better not only their family, but our schools and our entire community. And for another, the focus of their life has been to tear down all the barriers. For Savannah native John White, a chance friendship with a white U.S. Marine as a teenager would inspire him to do his part during World War II. Joining the Corps and training at Camp Montford Point in North Carolina, he became one of the first Black United States Marines. And on a tiny speck of an island in the middle of the Pacific, John would run into his friend one more time.
3 years later, I relieved him on Honoree talk, and he gave me a rifle. He said, "John, I know where you stay. I'll come to see you." He was in the 7th Defense Battalion. I hadn't heard from him since. From the time, 3 years later, in 1944, on Honoree talk, he must have was killed.
John and his fellow Marines had no illusions about their chances as the war ground closer to mainland Japan and the estimated casualty figures grew. Then they were granted a totally unexpected reprieve.
President Truman offered the dropping of the atomic bomb, which saved my life. I know it because we was getting ready for the invasion of Japan.
After volunteering to fight for freedom on the other side of the globe, John returned home along with millions of other service members. But this young Marine would quickly be reminded that his fight for freedom wasn't over.
I went out to get asked for a job, and I said I was a typist. And the white interviewer, the big heavyset fella, said, "Look at this nigga here coming on to be a white man." I came on crying.
But if you know John, you know he doesn't give up that easily, and this was only the beginning of his story of serving our community. Meanwhile, Camille O'Neill was growing up in the small town of DeSoto, Georgia, learning the value of community.
Like most small towns, everybody knew everybody's business, so it made you very aware that you had to behave yourself, because everybody knows you, and if you'd start acting up, it got home fast.
She met her husband while attending the University of Georgia, and then came home with him to Savannah, where she would become a librarian in the public school system.
Well, we had very few elementary libraries when I came to Savannah. And in fact, I went to 5 different libraries in 5 different schools in 5 different days of the week. So I traveled from place to place, ordering books, getting books ready for children, and then eventually we became full-time librarians in our own schools.
One perk of being a librarian? Her first full-time school was Hurd Elementary, where the library was the only air-conditioned room. But for this young educator and mother of 5, her world would soon be thrown upside down.
But, you know, when my husband died suddenly, there was another world that I had to face, and I think I'd not given a lot of thought of doing anything much alone, because we had a strong family, we had a good marriage, and for him to suddenly have a heart attack and drop out was an awakening for me as to what my responsibilities were. And that's when I decided I had to go back to school and get a little more education so I could get an advanced degree and become a principal. So it took a lot of perseverance and determination.
Luckily for our city, perseverance, determination, and optimism are never in short supply with Camille. The same could be said of Otis Johnson, who joined the Navy right out of high school and then returned home to attend Savannah State.
We had a boycott protesting conditions at Savannah State. And as a strategy, we said that, well, Armstrong Junior College has not desegregated. And we were in the midst of the Civil Rights Movement in 1963. So 50 of us said, we'll go over to Armstrong and register or at least apply to be admitted. That, in our minds, would put pressure on Armstrong, and Armstrong would put pressure on the president of Savannah State, and we picked up our applications, and we were all supposed to send them back in. I was the only one, unbeknownst to me, that submitted his application. I hopped over to the NAACP to talk to Mr. Law, W.W. Law, who was the president of the NAACP. I said, Mr. Law, I have this letter. Now, what should I do? He said, ain't but one thing to do, and follow through on it.
Otis would indeed follow through, struggling through discrimination and bureaucratic red tape to become the first African American student and graduate of Armstrong Junior College. But now what?
I'm graduating from Armstrong. What am I going to do? I'm going to apply to go to the University of Georgia, which I did. And after another long story, which we probably don't have time for, I became a bulldog, but I was a different kind of bulldog.
Otis would join a small group of African American students enrolled at the University of Georgia, where he would once again go on to graduate, continuing an academic career that would see him make history in public service and in politics. The history of our community and the servant leaders who strive to make it a better place is all around us, if you know where to look. Like in this photo featuring the first 3 African American aldermen in the city of Savannah, you might also notice Nippy Morrison. Mr. Morrison, along with several friends, would band together to deliver sack lunches to their older neighbors who could no longer prepare their own meals. From those humble beginnings 65 years ago, their efforts would grow into Senior Citizens Incorporated, where this year we will deliver our 7 millionth meal to our neighbors. Our mission has always been to support older adults in living vibrant, meaningful lives. And today, we fulfill that mission through programs like Meals on Wheels, Adult Day Health Centers, Care Navigation, and the Learning Center, providing comprehensive care and enrichment opportunities to meet the diverse needs of all older adults. As we mark our 65th anniversary, like our honorees today, we are not slowing down as we continue to look for opportunities to serve our neighbors. For John White, his next opportunity to serve would be as one of the original 9 Black officers on the Savannah Police Department. Trading in his Marine blues for another blue uniform meant a new battle, and having to demand respect from his fellow officers.
I left here as a man and got down, I became a boy when I got down to the barracks.
A common police tool at the time was a blackjack, but John had a different approach.
And I said, I don't need a blackjack, I need a mouth.
A lifelong member of St. James AME Church, talking your way out of trouble when you can and treating others as you would like to be treated guided his 37-year career in law enforcement, as well as his entire life.
I said, now really, regardless where you go, people going to recognize you, you don't recognize them. Because you're a policeman today, tomorrow you may not be. And you still will meet that same individual coming down the road.
I think he was just genuinely concerned, or he is just genuinely concerned about where we're going and what we're doing, not just in the community, but in our church and in our homes. I think that he feels that if you're doing what you're supposed to do at home and in church, it makes for a better person in the community.
And what is his secret to being 100 years old?
Thank God and appreciate what is being taught. Also, listen to your doctors. I quit smoking 50-some years ago. I quit drinking. But I'm just so proud that I'm alive and talk, and able to talk. I can't walk, but I can talk.
Dr. Otis Johnson, a self-professed egghead academic, took that gift for analytics and sociology and applied it to making a better community. He would serve on the city council, lead the Youth Futures Authority, became a member of the school board, and eventually mayor of Savannah.
And the community rallied around me, and I had a tough race with a runoff with Pete Lakakis, and I won by a slim margin. And then when I ran for re-election in '07, I won by 70% this time.
When reflecting on his journey growing up in Savannah fighting for civil rights, he has a simple answer as to why.
We were infected. We were infected with the idea of struggling for equality and equal opportunity.
And that struggle continues as Dr. J lends his gifts and insights to his beloved Savannah State and countless other organizations across our community.
When he speaks in a meeting, people listen, because we all know that he's processed a lot of information and he's speaking from his heart. And he wants what's best for the citizens and the residents of Savannah. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to help move our community forward in a way that serves all of its citizens.
That's my message to the young people. The struggle continues. Find your way in it, because you can't just sit on the sidelines and be a spectator, because you will not be allowed to be a spectator. Sooner or later, you're going to get involved in it one way or another. And the more prepared you are, the better the outcome will be for you and your children.
Struggling for a better outcome for children, her students, and all the children of Savannah also drove Camille as she became the first school librarian to become a principal in the state of Georgia. And as principal of the Juliet Gordon Low Elementary School, she became the champion of extraordinary efforts that have now become the standards of today.
We put the first computer lab in an elementary school in Chatham County. And we had old 64 Commodore computers, brute things that you can't even imagine having now. And we put them in one classroom, and we had a classroom for computers for the elementary children. Because the children are our future, and we've got to keep them, we've got to keep educating them and educating them well. I want to make sure that they, in addition to all the technology that is wonderful today, that they also can read and write and speak and have some background in art and music and life.
Raising her own children and being a champion for her own school would be enough for most people. But Camille is not most people, and she harnessed her dogged determination and positive outlook to improve the entire community.
Well, I guess I was always involved at Telfair because I wanted my children to enjoy the art at Telfair, and they took classes there. I also was very involved in music, and I wanted my children to be musically developed, so I had one piano player, I had two violinists, and one trumpeter in the crowd. But that was just because you wanted your children to have art, music, education, sound education. So that was just a part of the package then.
What might have started with the Telfair Art Museum would grow to include Candler Hospital, the Massey School, Georgia Historical Society, the Savannah Symphony, and her beloved Wesley Monumental Choir, just to name a few of her causes.
And I have told people there are a lot of extraordinary women in the world. Women who perhaps have buried 2 husbands like she has, who have lost a son like she has, who has lost a grandson, precious grandson like she has, and they do gather themselves up and move on in life. My mother was no exception in that department. But the real difference in our mother and many other successful women is that she's never been bitter about any of it. She has had this amazing positive attitude from the time we were very small until this very day. But I think that is what has made our mother a true living legend, because she has not only exhibited that throughout her whole life, but she shared it everywhere she's ever been. And that to me is a real tribute to a life well lived.
For their willingness to fight for what's right, drive to improve and educate, and having the determination to continue the struggle, Lieutenant John White, Camille O'Neill, and Dr. Otis Johnson are this year's Legends, Leaders, and Life Well Lived awardees.